Hey, yo, how's it going, boys? What is up? So it's back once again for yet another part of whether or not it's safe enough to reduce or get rid of this specific weapon. But for the most part, I think as for the intro, I'm just gonna try and reiterate again what I mentioned in the past. A lot of times in gacha weapons, you should never ever reduce them, but I think it's somewhat on the safer side to reduce them if they have like the multi-element stuff. But it's better to just not reduce every single one of them, because who knows, they might just update it in the future. They can just fuck it up or whatever. They can just change it altogether and stuff. You never know. Yeah, you don't know. So for now, I'm just gonna cover this particular video is gonna cover Earth weapons. So for now, I'm just gonna go through every single raid that we can see in the list, and then we are gonna go through the wiki to see every single weapon. I'm probably not gonna cover everything, obviously, but like all the class weapons, all the stupid annoying ones, I'm just not going to cover that one because that's kind of self-explanatory. I'm just gonna mention like the farmable ones, the ones that you can obtain in the game currently on June 2023, right? Along with like the the gacha weapons, obviously. Okay, and also not to mention, this might change as well because we haven't gotten the PNS version of Earth as well, so it might change in the future, who knows. But like, I just want to mention this first, I suppose. Yeah. So we're gonna go over to Magna 1. So Magna 1, we have Yugu. So we have the sword, dagger, stick, and bow. So the only thing you need to pay attention to is the sword. The sword is the only decent one, which for the most part you can actually kind of not need the swords either, to be honest. Yeah, you technically don't need it because the Magna 2 can kind of like bypass that in some way. It's just that this has a little bit more attack versus the one in Magna 2. Just that Magna 2 has lesser attack, more HP versus this one. But you should always have at least one of them because for the most part, majority of the players tends to like go with the whole Highlander setup. What Highlander setup means is that you always need at least one different weapon in each slot. Like every single slot, the 10 slots needs to be different. Okay, so even though for those who doesn't know about the Highlander strat as well, is that you can actually put in the same weapons. They may look the same, but they are technically different weapons. What these are the examples, I would say, is like the Rise of the Beast weapons. Because Rise of the Beast, in order for you to get the whole outfit stuff, you need to have like multiple, like 3 of them, right? If you put these 3 in your grid, all 3 will work in a Highlander grid, even though they're technically the same, but they are considered as a different type of weapon because they have a different name, basically. So I guess that's really how they see it, but yeah, that's how it is. For the most part, if you're like kind of like early in the game kind of thing, you can just have like one of each, because that's kind of like the go-to in like the budget Earth setups, you know. Even to this day, is that you just go one each, and then you just have Kaim, the Akaram character, sitting in the back, and you're good to go, right? The high-end one is the one where you need to get a lot of a specific Galleon weapon, which I will get to later, so don't worry about it. Okay, so moving forward, yeah, just the sword, you can have just one of them, and then this one we have so this one in particular, probably I need to highlight as well, is that I'm actually I'm seeing some homework that uses this. I am not joking. Recently, I've been seeing some videos from JP players, those guys that really test everything for us. They have been using this. Why? Apparently, the enmity stuff. They are actually using this because they are AX skills for this particular tier of weapons. I don't entirely know which AX they were using, but they are actually using it. So I feel like this should be pointed out. I'm not sure how good it is because I haven't really we don't really see a lot of these yet, but yeah, I think it's worth it's worth mentioning at least. Okay, and then the gun, I don't think people really use the gun, but you can at least have one of it too. You know, because it's like a typical Earth thing. Just have one each is good enough. If there's a need for multiple of it, I'll probably mention it, okay? Then moving on to Magna 2. Magna 2, Earth. Okay. So Earth, Magna 2 is that there are actually relatively nice Magna weapons that this Magna 2 has. Is that this one, you can typically ignore this one, but for the most part you definitely want at least the axe, you want this, you also want this. So basically this is not really for the grid. People use this for main hand purposes because the Ogi from this one is actually not so bad, and it's apparently a sword, even though it clearly looks identical to this and it's a katana. So also another thing is that people definitely want is the Medusa. They call this the Medusa because this was from originally the Medusa raid, but because Medusa raid is now single player, so you can get this from Sandbox, and you can also get this from some particular ones that has lucky loot or whatever. So Medusa Harp, definitely should at least have one of them as well on each. I would even say even the primal version as well. You definitely want one because they have a really good amount of raw damage on these. I think the only downside of this is that they have lower double attack or some shit. I think it's double attack. I don't remember. Check and actually refresh by mentioning in the chat. Yeah, I'm sure they know. But you just need one of these is more than enough, right? So because you can get a lot, you know, based on whether you're using primal or you're using Magna, Highlander, whatever. So having one of these. So it's like, put it this way. If you're using Magna Highlander, you can typically just slot in the primal one and it works. And then if you're using the primal Highlander, you can just slot in the Magna and it works too. And then sometimes in some occasions, even if you want to follow according to what you're using, it works as well. So yeah, the old Magna, I think I already mentioned it before. So yeah, okay, I think I can move forward from there. Inits. Oh, this one is also another thing that I should mention because this is one of the better Inits weapon out there. So Banu has a really good bow. This bow is really good because it gives you a lot of the supplemental shit that you probably want. So even for like the super end game stuff, like the top of the line stuff, people still use this. So this is a must have. Must have. For the dagger, I don't think really people use this that much. There are some though. There are some cases that people actually use this, but yeah, you can probably keep like one or two or something. Shouldn't be too, not really a big deal. And then moving on, that we have Malice. We have a few, I think. No, not this one. The sword, okay, so this sword, I know people were kind of using this to cap on crit, if I recall correctly, in Highlander setups. I don't really recall how many, but yeah, most of the time they just slot in one because it's a Highlander setup and they just need to cap crit or some shit. You don't really have to, but if you want to, just get one, it's fine, like, because that's kind of like the usual thing you tend to go for. Just having one of each is always fine. And then, is there any more? I think... Oh yeah, this is the okay. So Faceless is the garrison stuff. This is basically the farmable garrison weapon, like, you know, similar like Majestas, similar with the Dark Trashes, you know, those kind of stuff. This is basically Earth version. If you do not have Aeus weapon, you can kind of slot this in. Aeus weapon is technically better, but if you don't have it, you can just slot this in, and it works. All right. Moving on, we have the dragon weapon. The dragon weapon for this one typically is only used for Ogi. So like for OTK stuff and whatever, if you just want to focus on Ogi, you definitely need one of these as well, right? I don't think people really use multiple of this because most of the time, if they actually go for like the Galleon grid, they don't even bother with Ogi. You know what I mean? So just one is enough. Yeah. Then Revance. Okay, so this one is probably a brand new bit. I don't really mention this as well in my previous videos, but like this is probably a brand new bit. for Siegfried, we are starting to notice there's a lot of usage of his weapon. There are a lot of videos that is popping up because, you know, Guild War is coming. A lot more videos have been mentioning and sharing that this weapon is actually good to have. But this is mostly for like the high-end shit. As for how many we need so far, from what I've seen, the max people tend to show is like up to 3. This is for like, once again, this is for the end game shit where it require, you know, with galleon stuff or whatever. So I'm not entirely sure how many you need, but I think having 1 is pretty safe already. But just wanna quickly mention this, you know, it's worth mentioning, I feel like. Okay, so that is the end for Ravans. Now we go on to the wiki. Go to the wiki. Flashbang again. Buddha. Okay. Alright, so first one is Sutera's weapon, right? Is this Sutera's weapon? I don't remember. Sutera's weapon or Metera's summer weapon. Okay, never mind. You can technically just ignore that. Okay, so first one, AK. This is probably one of the main things that you need for also on Primal. One of the main things you must have for Primal, and typically once again you either use. Actually, even in Galleon's grid, you only use 1 anyway. Yeah, you only use 1. You don't actually use more than 1. So yeah, there's that. And then we have the Bunkle weapon, which is the Gilgamesh's axe. It's funny because this was mostly used as a meme, because that's what I did in the past. I think a lot of people was also kind of doing in the past, because what this gives is that increases your damage cap, right? So people. Like, I was using this alongside with like the Highlander shit from Kaim, right? Or Kaim, whichever you pronounce his name. And then it just so I can increase my fucking ground 0 damage like crazy. That's the meme I was going with, and I don't think you need that anymore, so no. Excuse me. This weapon is still pretty good if you're focused on Ogi again, because this is the one that gives you Ogi stuff. Yeah. It's not really that strong, but this is kind of like the budget farmable version of an Ogi weapon. You know, it's like the same as the dragon weapon earlier, Earth Dragon's gun. Kind of like that. Alright, so this one ignore. And then this is Ayer's weapon. This is the one I was mentioning earlier. So if you want like the whole typical garrison enmity type of weapon, Ayer's weapon is definitely the way to go, because it's good, right? But yeah, this is mostly for if you want the defenses and whatnot, right? So same shit. Medusa's weapon already explained earlier. This is the Zawardo's weapon, if I recall correctly. So same thing again. Is this Zawardo's weapon? No, this is the no, this is the fucking 150 Gomun weapon. Okay, ignore that. Ignore that. This is who? I have no idea who this is. Whose weapon is this? Jamal. Alright, you ignore his weapon as well. This is Catherine's weapon. You can also ignore it. Wait, no, hold on a second. People actually use this as like a budget crit weapon. Yeah, because this has a little bit of a earth attack as well. So it's like if you want to get you want to fit in your primal Highlander setup or whatever. If you're missing some damage, you want crit, you can kind of use this. It's not that great, but people were using this at some point. You can kind of use this as your main hand as well for some raid if you want to. But yeah, some people were using that like that. Okay, and then for this is OG Sieg's weapon, I think. Yeah, no, you can typically ignore this because see the multi-element. Wow, so cool. Class weapon ignore, add my weapon again ignore, blah blah blah. This one is Iodos's fantasy version or something. Benjamin, you can ignore his weapon as well. This is I don't remember whose weapon is this. This is Rise of the Beast, I think. Yes, so Rise of the Beast you can typically also get one of these because you only can get one of these anyway. Yeah, you can get one of these. It can be reduced anyway, so it's fine. I don't remember who the fuck is this. Oh, this is an event. Okay, there's a lot of stuff I don't really recognize here. Class weapon ignore. This one ignore. Event ignore. So once again, this is the Rise of the Beast weapons where you can get up to 3 different versions, which also stack each individual weapons if you are trying to go with Highlander setups. Okay, it works because they all apparently they count as a different weapon in Highlander, because apparently there is one that is also giving you the damage cap thing. This is probably the one that you need anyway. The rest you can just whatever you want to get the outfit, you need all three. If not, you just reduce it, whatever, it doesn't matter. This one as well, I think you can only get like one of it. I think this is the Rise of the Beast weapon as well. Can ignore that. Event weapon, ignore. This is yes, this is Fiorito's weapon, right? This is one of those weapons that I think people would actually use to a certain degree. I think even today in some specific, very very specific setups that people were actually slotting this in. Like, I think I remember seeing a particular video where they were using 2 of these in the Galleon grid setup. Not entirely sure why, but they were. So I guess they just won for the extra the fucking HP, I suppose. I don't know. I just feel like it's worth pointing out. And then this one is who? Oh, is this Yukata Silva? Yeah, Silva's weapon. You can ignore. Actually, wait. I think people were using this as like also another like Ogi kind of thing, and because it gives you a little bit of crit. Yeah, because you know, in order for you to really maximize your primal, how do I say, your primal Ogi stuff can be a little bit finicky because they're all limited weapons. So yeah, people tend to actually rely like all this because they have like so many dupes or whatever, so they tend to do that. This is Yugu's weapon, like as in the character Yugu's weapon. Don't think you really need that. You can ignore that. You can ignore this. This is our current weapon. I think it's already self-explanatory. If you already have that maxed out, or if you at least have that to follow me break to slot it in, is good. Ignore that. Ignore this. This is Dianta's weapon, I think. Yeah, ignore that. Rise of the Beast weapon, ignore that. This Summer Ilnot's weapon, you can also ignore that. Ignore that. Yeah, all the Google Moon weapon, ignore that. This is an event weapon, I think. Ignore that. Ignore that. This is the Golden Knight's weapon. So this is like the number 1 weapon that people use for Ogi. Like if you want to go Ogi and Kango and all that shit, this is that number 1 weapon that people usually use. Probably just one as always, right? Because I don't think people really slot in 2 of these. There's no reason for you to slot 2 of these. It's such a waste of slot, man. Holy shit. Even though if they're using Galleon, right? This thing is shit till you put in multiple of it. But yeah. So you really just use this mostly for this. I don't think people really use this for crit. Even for crit, they just use they use other shit anyway. They don't really rely on crit, to be honest. Ignore. Our current weapon, you know what it is. This is an event weapon. Oh, I should point out that this is one of those weapons that you can probably use as a main hand. For this one, this is an event weapon, which you can use as a main hand because it's a relatively decent main hand, and Earth doesn't have a lot of bows. Yeah, Earth does not have a lot of bows, so it's worth noting that this is actually a not bad main hand to use. You can ignore this one. This is the Proving Ground weapons. That is the one that people were farming for. But once again, Proving Ground weapons, you definitely just want to have 1 of each. And then if you want to have you want to cap this, I think people tend to farm 2 of them or whatever, but for the most part you can typically just have 1 is already more than enough. Gold Moon weapon you can ignore. This one you can ignore. This one you can, this is Summer Vera, I think you can ignore because you have fucking this is class weapon you can ignore. Class weapon ignore. Draconic, once again same thing. If you need a defensive weapon instead of Opus, you can always grab it because it's a one-time thing. You cannot reduce any of this shit, so it's fine. This one is event weapon. I think you can ignore this. This is I don't remember whose character. This is Vayne or Laguna. Okay, you can ignore that either. Event weapon you can ignore. Guild War you can ignore. This is that whatever that Earth character is a shit character, right? I remember. Oh, it's not really that shit. It's Beatrix. Yeah, Beatrix is kind of whatever too now these days, to be honest, so you can ignore that too. This one you can ignore. Medusa, OG Medusa's weapon. having one of this is not bad because you can do this stare stiff stuff, but for the most part you can typically just ignore. Excalibur, ignore. Faceless, I already mentioned. Siegfried's weapon from Ravan, I already mentioned it, so ignore this. This is Samajiki's weapon. You can typically also kind of ignore this, because I don't really remember people really use this. Maybe at most just one as well. But yes, Samajiki though, so yeah. I don't really see a lot of people use this. Yeah, maybe they did, but it's very, very niche though. But yeah, this one, oh, this is the one that people use a lot. Christmas Anturia. Yes, a lot of people actually use this because he has very big crit and he gives you stamina. This is a very, very good weapon when it comes to Highlander, and I think even in Galleon Grid people also use this because of how good it is. Because of this too here. Yeah. So you can, I mean, the killing cap is a plus, but a lot of people just use it for this too. Very, very good. Sadly, I don't have them. Her. Ignore this one. Ignore. This is a character's weapon, but you can ignore. Explained this already. This is a chicken's weapon. You can typically ignore as well. Don't really need that. This is another bow, rare bow. The OG Ilsa's weapon, which you can also use if you want crit and stuff, because I think people were using that as well at some point. Because you see, you have crit, and then you have medium attack as well, and sure, you know, why not? This is an event weapon. I think you can ignore. Wait, no, this is Arulu's weapon, I think. Yes, it's shit. Okay, ignore that. This is a Goldmoon weapon, ignore. Seraphic is self-explanatory, you definitely need that. Alex weapon, you already mentioned. This one is the shit one, yeah. This is the shit character, right? Yeah, Herja, man. This one is shit. You can typically ignore it as well. Oh yeah, so this is Gandalf, or what's his name? Alethea. Yeah, we call him Gandalf because he's fucking old. Old man, literally dressed up the same way, and yeah, he has a sword and stick and shit. Looks exactly like Gandalf. So people were using this at some point just so you can get extra damage cap, but not really anymore. But I feel like it's still worth noting that you can still kind of use this in your Highlander if you want. This one you can ignore. This one you can ignore. This is Pengy's weapon. You can technically also ignore. Opus is self-explanatory. You definitely need that. This is Summer. No, Christmas Clarice, I think. This is Christmas Clarice, right? Hey, no, it's not. It looks almost identical, though. I think. Lamreta, you can ignore that as well. You can ignore this as well. Ignore. Hercules, ignore. Hollow Sky is also self-explanatory. If you have it, sure. If you don't have it, it's fine. You're not gonna miss it. It's one of the Akasha weapons, Hollow Sky stuff. Christmas Magisa is... her weapon is kind of whatever, you can ignore. Yeah, you can ignore that as well. Okay, so Ichigo is one of the must-have as well. When it comes to Primal, you once again only need one. There are some particular setups where I think when they're using in Galleon, they use more than one, but that is very, very niche. There's really not much reason for you to go with that, because a lot of times they just go with... because the more you use this, right, the only thing you're getting is just raw damage, basically, right? Because you get more of big attack tree, and then you get medium stamina. So all this really gives you is just raw damage. And at that point, it's like if you really just want raw damage, you can just might as well put in crit or whatever, which is already a much better way on getting a much more consistent damage anyway, right? So you don't really need a lot of this. So yeah, one of this is good. This is Earth Orchid, I think. Yeah, I think this is Earth Orchid. You don't really need her weapon. Yeah, you don't. This one is the other burst character. I've forgotten the... yeah, Mireille and Riseto. Yeah, this one you can ignore as well. Ignore this. I already mentioned that, the Benubo. Oh, okay. So Jackknife is one of those very rare instances that is actually quite good. Like a random subtickable character's weapon that is actually really good for Primal. So people actually use this because, once again, for enmity stuff, and then you have this as well. You get like a big attack, you get enmity, and a small attack. So a lot of raw damage. You get a lot of raw damage from this. And then you get enmity as well on top of that. So pretty handy. Yep, it's very, very handy. As for this, I think the most I remember the most I've seen on these is like people were using 2 of these. But like once again, if you have 1 of it, you're good. Because you know, Highlander stuff, okay? And ignore that, ignore that, ignore that, ignore that, ignore. Oh my god, the stuff. FF11 weapon you can ignore. Ignore. Goldman weapon you can ignore. Ah, there we go. The Galleon's weapon. So this is the whole meta thing that will most likely come along with I mean works well with another PNS version which Earth should be getting very, very soon. We are not sure when is it getting, most likely next Flash. So be ready for that. So the most you will want for this is 3. Okay? There are some meme cases where people actually slot in 4, but you only need 3. As for the difference, whether you want to go for Galleon Grid or not, is you only want to switch into Galleon Grid if you have 3. You do not go if you have 2. 2 sucks. It's honestly better to just stick with Kaim at that time. With the whole Highlander Kaim stuff. You will only, once again, you only want to go swap into Galleon when you have 3 of these. That's how it is. Unfortunately, that's how the game works these days, but yeah, so I just want to point that out. You can ignore this. Xeno weapons, once again, you should always have 1 of each, but this one I probably have to particularly mention is one of the better ones to have because it's such a really, really strong main hand weapon, right? Because it's one of those weapons that MC can get water switch on Ogi, and it's a sword. And what sword does is that basically a lot of classes can be using this. So in other words, if you're off element or whatever, this allows you to get water switch, so it's pretty good. So this is one of the few things that I probably should mention it if you do get this to ULB and whatnot, right? Pretty nice. Okay, Little Macho is an event weapon, you can ignore. This is Valentine Monica, you can ignore that weapon. Ignore this. This is the Malice weapon, you can ignore. Ignore. This is Valentine Medusa, I think. Valentine Medusa you can typically ignore as well. Her weapon's kind of whatever. And this is this the Zarwado's weapon now? I don't remember. Oh no, this is Elena's weapon. They all have very weird designs, but yeah, Lena's weapon, typically I don't really see people use this, so I don't think you really need that. You can typically just ignore that. This is Nemone, the OG Nemone, is it? Yeah, this is the OG Nemone. I think I remember people use this as like also another budget garrison weapon. But honestly, I think if you really want garrison, it's just better off using, what's that? Using Faceless anyway. Faceless is probably better. This is Summer Silva, I think. Oh, this is a class weapon. Never mind. This is Jessica, I think. Yukata Jessica. Yeah, you can ignore that. Yes. So this is Grand Alex's weapon. There are instances that people don't use this at all. Okay? I would like to point out there are particular instances that people do not use this. But for the most part, a lot of people use this in Primal, at least just 1 of it. You only need 1 of it anyway. People use this just so they can get the extra HP and the big attack thing. But for the most part, people really... I mean, typically you don't really need this, but you know. Yeah. It's like, because you know, you just get big attack 2, that you just ignore the double attack. Nobody gives a shit about double attack. And then you get HP, right? Typically, you can just make use of like, you know, say like for example, like if you really want the HP and some attack, you can just go like Fiorito's weapon, for example, right? You could go with that instead of this. So I just want to give like a little note for this one. Okay, so ignore that, ignore that, ignore that. Ignore that, ignore that. This one, event weapon as well, ignore that. This... Is this a... is this like a... Yeah. Halloween Kukuru's weapon. You can typically ignore this as well, but the character is good. Ignore that. This is Dante's weapon, I think. You can ignore that. Okay. So this one is Summer Alex. This is Summer Alex's weapon. If you want to go Ogi, and if you do not have Grand, what's the name? Grand Golden Knight, yeah? If you do not have Grand Golden Knight, right? This weapon can be your makeover weapon. You can use this as well. I'm using this because I didn't really want to bar my Golden Knight weapon because I have so many of these for some reason. So I just combined this and I'm using this instead of that, and it still works almost as well as that anyway, so it's good. It's fine. It's okay. It works almost the same. This one I think explained. This one is Halloween Eustace, I think. You can ignore that. Ignore that. Ignore that. Ignore that. Ignore that. Cage system. Oh yeah, there is a cage system as well. I don't think I would really tell you whether is it worth to cage an item or not, though, to be fair. If I did, probably I would probably mention it in later videos, not on this one though. Ignore that. This is the OG Kegluster weapon. You can ignore that. Goldman weapon, ignore. Mentioned this already. This one is ignore. Ignore, 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 ignore. This is Ladiva's weapon, ignore. Event weapon, ignore, 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 ignore. There's a lot of shitty items here. Ignore. This one is class weapon, ignore, ignore, ignore. Rose Queen weapon, ignore. Ignore, ignore. Izino weapon, ignore. Well, I already mentioned it earlier, so. This is someone's weapon. Who is this? Christmas Europa's weapon. You can typically ignore as well because it's no full armor break and it's pretty shit. This is the OG Sarah's weapon. Yeah, you can ignore that too. This is Satyr's weapon, I think. You can typically ignore this as well, but you can kind of use this as like your garrison weapon as well because this has enmity. It's alright. If you have that maxed out, sure, I suppose. Ignore. And then Akaram weapon. Okay, so this one I have a little bit of an extra note that I would like mention. Another note I would like to mention is because people actually use this for sliming if you do not have Dark John's weapon, because you can actually use this with Glory Bringer and you can do plain damage, so you can slime or whatever shit. Typically you don't really need to slime anymore, but yeah, I just want to point out that this has this. And then yeah, the crit stuff, you want to fit in your Akaram stuff, that helps. Same thing for this other one. Yeah, ignore, 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 ignore. I can ignore this as well. This one is event weapon as well. Ignore. Militus weapons as well. Never ever reduce it. Just keep collecting them if you get any. Yeah. This one you can typically ignore as well. Is this Jin? Yep, Jin's weapon. Alright, he's shit, and you can ignore him. Ignore. I think you can. Was this ignore this as well? I don't remember. Was this? Oh my god, the illegal character's weapon. Yep, ignore, dude. You can typically ignore that as well. Ignore this, ignore. This is Baal's weapon, I think. Yeah, I think it's Baal's weapon. You can typically ignore that as well. As in the character, not a farmable one. So you can ignore that. Ignore the Militus is self-explanatory. I think I already mentioned this. This is the OG Eustace weapon, which you only have enmity and shit in there. So not really that great anymore. It used to be a thing in the past, but not anymore. This one is it Tico? Summer Tico? Yeah, Summer Tico. I mean, I don't think you really use that, no. This is one of the super early EX weapon as well. I think this is yep, this is the Aimas weapon as well. Very, very early, which have question mark. Ignore that. This one is the Benu's weapon. Ignore. Guild War. Ignore. 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 This is the Rose Queen. What version of Rosetta already? Summer Rosetta. Yeah, you can typically whatever to this too, actually. Ignore that. Tiger's weapon. I think I've seen people use Tiger's weapon. I actually seen people use Tiger's weapon to a specific degree because it's decent. But yeah, you shouldn't reduce this at all. You should just keep it for now. Militus weapon is self-explanatory already. I already explained it earlier. Ignore that. Ignore that. Xenos weapon, I already explained it. Just have one of each is good. Ignore that. Ignore this. Ignore this. Ultima I can ignore. And then what? No, this is ignore. This is the OG Naru's weapon. Yep, it's an earth weapon for some reason. You can ignore this. Yep, I think you can safely reduce that too if you want. This one I think you can ignore as well. This is whatever. Angleville and Thor. Class weapon you can ignore. I don't remember who is this. What is this? This is who? Oh, this is an event weapon you can ignore. World Ender is Grand Thunderfawn's weapon. This is also the other type of the supplemental skill damage and skill cap. So once again, if you want to max this out, it's only 2 of it. But since most of the time you're using Highlander anyway, so one of this is already more than enough. Even so, I don't think people really use 2 of these anyway in like Galleon, because they don't really bother using this kind of shit anyway. So yeah. Zawardo weapon, I think I already mentioned in the other previous videos where it's not worth grabbing it right now. Maybe later on in Full Lumen Break it might be good, but not now. This is the Earth version of Vasiraga, I think. I don't remember which Vasiraga is this. Oh yeah. You can ignore that as well. Event weapon you can ignore. This Saurus's weapon you can ignore as well. Xeno. And then this is Leona's weapon. So this is the weapon that I remember you would want to slot in if you're actually able to make use of this. And then alongside you can get some HP out of that. This is the only reason. So for the most part, a lot of times people don't really use this unless if you're going with the end game race where you take a lot of turns or whatever. So this helps. Other than that, there's really no reason for you to use this at all. Okay, Yugu I already mentioned. Astro, once again, I think I already mentioned before. If you can get it, sure, cool. It will help you, yes. But for the most part, you can typically just remove this because this is only for skill cap. If you already have Ultima, you technically don't need this anymore. Because all this does is just giving you EX mod, really. Because this does not stack with Opus or Ultima. Okay? So just want to point out, if you want to use this, just make sure if you do not have Ultima, you can actually use this. It's okay. If you do, you can throw this away. Not like you can reduce it anyway, but yeah. And then this is also the other single one weapon only. You can get any more than one of from Rise of the Beast for your Magna. It's a progression type of thing, which is quite good if you're Magna and you want to make use of once again progression. Then yeah, you use this, right? It helps. Alright, and then last but not least is the Golem guy. I've forgotten his name. Adam, dude. It's freaking Adam. You can typically ignore his weapon as well. I mean, his garrison, sure, is kind of okay, I guess, but to me is whatever, honestly. I don't really see a lot of people really making use of that either, you know. But yeah, so I guess that really covers all the weapons in the game so far. That took away too much of my time. That's it. Hopefully you'll find this helpful, and on to the next part, which is probably gonna be some other time. Yeah, the next remaining 3 elements I will mention it some other time, because this is taking way too long. Alright, later.